3, 2. So good afternoon to everyone. I appreciate you being here and being a part of the 2021-2022 calendar committee. We've got quite a bit to talk about this afternoon, and hopefully all of you received your information ahead of time, because again, there's quite a bit in there. And so we wanted to make sure that you receive that information. We'd love to start our meeting with a welcome from our Board of Education Committee Chairperson, Mr. Nelson Beaulieu.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Yeah.
Yes,
What
sir.
a great way to start off a Zoom with no technological difficulties. And it's always a great way to start off our next school year talking about when we're actually going to be in school. I sent the text to Dr. Smith this morning. If you haven't been on this committee, you know I'm a bit of a calendar junkie. I love calendars. It's my chance to geek out. And, you know, what we're doing this year is pretty exciting because I firmly believe that we are planning our very first post-pandemic calendar. The educational system in the United States and certainly here in New Hanover County has been through some things that are really going to test it and test us. And this is, in a way, the first step toward normalcy. And I do believe in September we're going to have normalcy and we're going to figure out exactly what it looks like, how our teachers are going to be able to budget their time, and some of the things that we want to focus on as a district are really dependent on this calendar. So I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you very much to our principals, all our different stakeholders in our different schools. We have a lot of calendars to go through, but I'll let Dr. Smith get to it, and I look forward to being a part of this. Thank you all very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Beaulieu, for that welcome. So our plan for today, the agenda is pretty straightforward. We want to review and have a discussion of the calendar input that we've received thus far. So you should have received some draft calendars, and we will go through what the information that's in your packet, the information that was sent to you ahead of time. And then once we do that, then we want to be able to respond to questions and offer answers to those questions that are posed by you as members of the calendar committee, or from those of you who are those of you who are representing. So those that you're representing, the questions that they have as well. And then our goal so far would be to bring to the board a recommendation at the February 16th board meeting, if there's an interim board meeting scheduled. That's not currently on the calendar, but if there is an interim board meeting scheduled, it would be our goal to bring them that recommendation, therefore giving parents as much time as possible so that they can plan for the 2021-2022 school year. And if there is not an interim meeting, then we would bring a recommendation to the board at the March board meeting. So there's a lot of work to be done in a short amount of time. So I'll scroll back up to the top of this document, and just to go through your packet, what you should have is the agenda, which essentially is what we've just gone through, a list of committee members. And so from that, you can see that we have a very representative group. We want to make sure that voices from our stakeholders are represented at this table. And we'll take attendance to make sure that folks are present, and if they're not present today, because of course, if we were all in the room together, I could just scan it, but we'd have a sign-in sheet. It's a little different remotely. So we want to make sure that representation is there. And for those who are not here today or not present online, then we will reach out to them to make sure that we solicit their input. You do have blank 2021-2022 school calendars. So for anyone who wants to draft calendars that are significantly different than the ones that we have drafted based on the input we've received thus far, you do have calendars to do that with. I would say to you, disregard the total number of required days that are in the I think in the center, in the first bullet, there is some flexibility around that if it's related to the number of hours. So for all the districts, excuse me, all the schools in the districts, except specifically for our year-round calendar, we do have flexibility around the number of days versus the number of hours. And so you do have calendars for all of those schools. Excuse me, just a second. And then we have the draft 2021, 2022 calendars we want to go through. And we do have sample calendars that were pre-COVID. So our COVID calendars, the calendars we're currently operating on, of course, look very different than our previous or pre-COVID calendars. And as Mr. Bowyer shared with you, our hope, desire, and what we're anticipating is that we are going to be post-pandemic. And so we will be able to operate with calendars that are much, much more familiar than the current calendar that we're operating under right now. Then the next item in your packet was the latest school calendar legislation summary for NCDPI. And so there was legislation that was specific to this school year only. And so some of that has expired. So you will not see remote learning days in these calendars because that legislation has specifically expired. It was only for the 1 year. And then you'll see the holiday schedule for 2021, 2022. And that's from the Office of State Personnel. And then the makeup days in regards to calendar law, and then the important contact page. So all of that information you should have received ahead of time. And if you've got a question or a comment in regards to that, please post that in the chat. So I'm going to now scroll to our calendar committee members. And what I'd like to do, again, is to take attendance. So if when I call your name, you could just unmute yourself and let us know that you're present on the call, that would be appreciated. Mr. Bowyer?
I am here, thank you.
And I am present. Ms. Gibson?
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Brenton?
Present.
Mr. Anderson? And if you are representing someone and I call their name and they're not here and they've asked you to serve as their deputy, if you would let us know that you're here, so we will make sure that that division or department is represented. Ms. Farnham?
Present.
Ms. Small?
Present.
Dr. Coker? Cherry Smith?
Here.
Ms. Murray?
Present.
Ms. Dubendorf?
Present.
Ms. Smiles?
Present.
Ms. Steinhilber?
Present.
Ms. Leek?
Present.
Mr. Broadfoot?
Present.
Now I have to tell you folks, you know, just a little middle school joke. It just takes me back to classroom time. I don't know the last time I've called attendance. So I'm smiling behind the mask. Ms. Ducharme?
Hello.
Ms. Byers?
Present.
Ms. Stout?
Present.
Ms. Wooten?
Present.
Mr. Valons?
I'm here.
Ms. Phelps?
I'm here.
Ms. Johnson?
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Crowe?
Present.
Ms. White?
Present.
Ms. Manning?
Present.
Ms. Manning again? I'm joking.
I'm here. I'm here.
I wanted to make sure we didn't have a clone.
It's me.
And then Ms. Skipper, and I do believe Ms. Skipper is not going to be here today.
No, and Miss Wooten is here for her.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate that, Ms. Wooten. All right, so now we know, and just from that list, you can, and Mr. Anderson, thank you.
I'm here. I'm sorry. I was on the phone.
Oh, no worries. And just from that list, you can see the level of representation that we have on the calendar committee. And it's very important that we have representation from different divisions, different grade span levels, and then also our parent voice is extremely important to us as well. So I appreciate you being here and being a part of this process. And also you'll notice that we have teacher representation and also principal representation, which again, extremely important to be able to do this work. All right, so in front of you, you have what we are proposing at this point. And again, this is very much a draft, our first draft, for the 2021-2022 school calendar. And so I'll give you just a chance to look at that. And I don't know if I'm gonna help by making it smaller. See if we can get a little more of it on the screen, or maybe we'll just scroll. That looks like this. I'm going to scroll and hopefully it doesn't get anyone dizzy. But at the end of the calendars, you have a document that looks like this, and it really serves as a cheat sheet to show the number of days, the number of holidays, the number of work days, designated, undesignated, vacation days, as we look through the calendars. So as many of you know, because you've been a part of this process quite a bit, there are requirements in terms of the number of days that we have to calendar. But what we do, so we don't get a lot of control over that, but where our flexibility occurs and how that starts. Also, you remember when the calendar has to begin and when the calendar has to end. And so that is governed by calendar law. And so essentially it is, I believe the Monday, closest to August 26th. So we can't begin sooner than that. So the very first day that we can calendar for students would be August 23rd. And that's why that day was selected. And then you see these symbols, which really just represent staggered enrollment. And so we have 3 days of staggered enrollment, and our elementary folks understand very much how important that is and what that represents for our students and families. In September, we have the Labor Day calendared. We've identified interim reports, and what we tried to do is, to the greatest extent possible, balance the semesters. Now, I'll let you know they are not balanced, but to the greatest extent possible, we tried to balance semesters. But one thing that you'll notice, which we've gotten a lot of positive feedback on this year, we are actually ending first semester prior to the December winter break. So prior to going home in December for the break, the first semester ends on December the 17th. And I'd love some feedback from our high school folks and our secondary folks, specifically, including middle school, if that's something that did not work or that you don't think would work, because that really is a driver for those students. Also, it better aligns with what's happening at the community college and the university level in terms of when courses end. So that was a driver in terms of that. Now, an unintended consequence of that is the fact that you also notice that there are not a lot of teacher work days that occur during the month of September and October and November. And that's because they're being front loaded at the beginning of the calendar to afford for teacher training, so that we're training teachers before they arrive in the classroom, and we're not having to pull those teachers out of the classroom to train them. And then also we're maximizing the number of student contact days before the end of the December break. And then also what the feedback that we have consistently received is that November 24th, it is extremely important for that to be a non-student day. And so I see I've got some comments in the chat. And thank you, Mr. Bowyer. We will be having an interim board meeting. Yes, please keep ending our fall semester before break. Middle schools like the semester ending in December. Thank you for that feedback. It is invaluable. But from our parents' perspective, we would love to hear from you, and then also from our teachers' perspective. Because again, there are not a lot of work days here, but the driver here is that we front load on the front end, providing our teachers with the opportunity for training, so we're not pulling them out of the classroom. And then we're also not asking teachers to go into classrooms unprepared. And you see that there are a number of days here, so we're not asking teachers to do everything in 2 or 3 days, which unfortunately had been past practices, just simply because the limited number of teacher work days. So any additional comments, and specifically asking for feedback from our parents as well as our teachers. Okay, and thank you, Ms. Johnson, for sharing, like having the semester ending before break. We've heard that from parents as well. We think it reduces the stress on students. They don't feel obligated to study through the holidays, and they can enjoy that time with their family. So thank you for that feedback. So now transitioning to second semester, and one thing you'll notice is that we have 3 teacher work days built in on January 3rd, 4th, and 5th. This gives us some flexibility. It allows for us not to have to start the second semester on a full week, which we've gotten that feedback in the past. It also gives our secondary schools some flexibility if there's a need to work with students around grade replacement, or just providing some additional support to students and families. If we made some changes or transitions in our curriculum, and then again, it provides teachers that training time before we start working with students. So again, it's not that students show up on the first day and we expect that schools are going to be completely ready to start. We've got some comments. I think having the second semester start with those teacher work days is a great idea. Benefits both teachers and students immensely. Thank you. We could have used that for this semester. Glad to see it for next year. Yes. Well, I think that was the initial plan this past year, but again, COVID hit and we ended up with remote learning days on that. But thank you for that feedback. From Amanda White, what is the reason for the 2 work days in March? So we will definitely get to that. And I don't know that we've got 2 work days in March. Let me check. Let's see. And the 14th is, let's see what that is. And what is the 14th?
One of those days, LaShawn, is election day.
Okay, do we have a reason for the designation? Let's see. Let me get to that. So I think it might have something to do with the end of the grading period for that. So yeah, so the end of the grading period, and thank you, Ms. White, for that question. So the election and as you know, when we have general elections that fall in November, the presidential elections, we have the November, the first Tuesday in November as the day that we take as a teacher work day. When we're doing the primaries, that falls in March. And so that's why the March 8th is a teacher work day, specifically because we try to have our schools closed to students when we are bringing in the public for elections. And then March 14th follows the end of the grading period, which is on March 11th. And again, we weren't able to accommodate teachers on the front end of the calendar with that, just simply because we wanted to maximize the number of student days so that we could end the semester prior to going home for the holiday. But we did have flexibility on the second semester, and so that's why we built that in. Let's see, we've got a question going back to the first semester. Is it possible to move one of those August dates to the end of the first semester? So what happens then is you create even greater imbalance in the number of days that you have per semester if you were to move that. Now, logically, what we could have done to keep that balance is you could make the 20th a student day, but then I think it would be hard to bring teachers and students back to school on December the 20th, and then they be out on the 21st. So I definitely understand the desire there, but maximizing the number of days on the front end of the calendar ends up being the sacrifice that we make so that we can end before the December winter break. And what I'll say here is something in the calendar, providing teachers with 22 teacher work days, and that's more than our teachers have ever received before. And of course, we can continue to evaluate that to see if that supports what we're trying to do instructionally. But we wanted to make sure we had a calendar that was as responsive to teacher professional development needs, student instructional needs, and then also the needs of the family as much as possible. And then also adhering to calendar law. In April, you see the days that have been designated for spring break. As you know, if you've been a part of this process for a while, we have not historically had Easter Monday off, but we've gotten feedback that that's very important. And so we have consistently, at least for the last 2 years, included that. So this would be the Easter, would be spring break. And then in May, you see when the school year ends. The last day for students would be the 26th. We've heard loud and clear from our secondary folks that they need a day before graduation. And again, we may have to have some different kind of conversations in regard for graduation, but we're assuming that graduation is by next year is going to be what it has previously been. So we give a teacher work day here so that high schools can do everything that they need to prepare for graduation. And then with that graduation on a Saturday. If at some point in the future that the district decides to do something different, then we always can revisit that and maybe the graduation ends up being on a Friday. But that is a conversation for a later time. And then to make sure that we are meeting the requirements in terms of the 215 days that need to be calendared, that would end the school year for staff, for teachers, or for teachers who follow this calendar, or for staff who follow this calendar on June 6th. So again, questions, comments, feedback specific to this. Because what happens is this becomes the foundational calendar by which all other calendars are developed. And this calendar includes 172 student days, 15 undesignated work days, 7 designated work days, 11 holidays, 10 vacation days. And what I'll say about designated versus undesignated days. Just because a day is undesignated on the district calendar does not mean that a principal can't designate that day.
Dr. Smith,
Yes, sir.
prior to you saying that sentence, we didn't hear anything that you were saying.
Oh, I apologize. Oh, sorry, I apologize. Thank you, Dr. Faust, for that feedback. So at this time, I'd welcome feedback from you, questions, comments. And again, speaking specifically to the number of designated days, just because a day is designated on the calendar, not designated on the calendar, does not mean that it can't be designated by a principal specific to their school. Or there could be a day that's designated for elementary teachers who teach math, but not for high school teachers who teach English. So we do have that flexibility that occurs. And this calendar consists of 172 student days, 15 undesignated work days, 7 designated work days, 11 holidays, and 10 vacation days.
Hey, Dr. Smith, speaking on behalf of the high school's principals, I think that they will really love this. Ending this semester, for all those dual enrollment students has really worked out well this year. So I appreciate all the work, and I'm sure my high school principals will really appreciate this calendar. So I love it. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Ms. Ducharme. So we had a question from Ms. Amanda White. How many days could be changed from undesignated to designated? By calendar law, we can designate up to 20 of the 22 days. So if you look at the calendar law, what it speaks to is that the district has to provide at least 2 days that are identified for which teachers can take leave. So if we have identified 22 days that are teacher work days, then up to 20 days can be designated. Now, I don't think that that would ever be the case, but asking the question, how many can, up to 20 of the 22. And then from Deanna Leak, I think, Deanna, your question is a very appropriate one for now. We increased the school times this year to accommodate a decrease in the number of student days. That would continue. So the current start and end times for elementary, for middle and high school would continue within this calendar. And thank you, Deanna, for that question.
Just going to my question in the chat, is it possible to have an early release day at the end of the first quarter, or does that mess with the number of days, since that's still a day at school?
So thank you for that question. What it does is it impacts the number of hours. And very honestly, what we have found are that early release days are very ineffective because we used to have early release days that were designated specifically for professional development. And essentially by the time school dismisses at 1, folks get to where they need to be. It's very limited time to really do the things that might be scheduled for professional development. And then also when we looked at specifically secondary calendars, what we found were that calendars were really focused on scheduling students to eat lunch, reduced instructional periods, and then for teacher coverage. So the value add of an early release day was just simply not there. That is also one of the drivers why we've added so many full teacher work days, so that we can have quality professional development, not burden teachers with teaching for half a day, then dismissing students and then transitioning to another professional activity in the afternoon. So it's not a question of could we or couldn't we, it's really the question of would we want to do that? And from, you know, my instructional experience, the feedback that I've gotten before, I'd much rather see our teachers have full work days on the beginning of the calendar, so that we can, you know, provide them with that opportunity for professional practice, as opposed to try to squeeze it in and then do it in the half-day format. But I welcome the feedback of others as well. Because half-days used to be really prevalent in our calendar, and they were a struggle, yes.
I guess
I welcome the feedback of others.
I guess the main stakeholder I was thinking in mind with that is our beginning teachers. Even though it is great to have, you know, front-loaded training, there's a lot that needs to happen, you know, once you have your feet wet, particularly our BT1s. And so I know that has been a space for them to be able to either have beginning teacher training or space to meet with their mentors and things like that. That's just been my experience as a mentor and as a BT many moons ago.
I'd agree with Elizabeth on that. If it can't be done in the calendar because the instructional half days are not effective all the way around, then, and this is not a calendar, is there something that we can do in like to provide an extra planning period every so often or coverage for our beginning teachers to be able to have that time to decompress and talk with their mentors?
So I appreciate that suggestion, and what I can do is surely share that with our folks who work with our BTs, and that could be a topic of conversation with them. Because I agree, we need to make.
Can't hear you.
We can't hear you. Mhm.
All right. I don't have the greatest. Let me try these. Are you guys able to hear me now?
We still can't hear you, Dr. Smith.
You're not able to hear me. And this is not my computer, so my earbuds aren't. Are you able to hear me now? Is there a microphone on this?
I mean, that's going, looks like I can hear you.
If you can hear me, please let me know.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. Thank you. I apologize for folks who know me well. I do not have the best track record with technology, and this is not my computer. So unfortunately, my ear pods were not connected to it. But again, I think that we can surely bring the topic of BT needs to our folks in human resources who support those teachers within our district to make sure that we're addressing their needs. So thank you, Ms. White, for that suggestion, and thank you, Ms. Phelps, for bringing that to our attention. So we have a suggestion from Mr. Broadfoot in terms of spring break is late next year, and little time between that and the end of the year. Would moving spring break to March and keeping Good Friday be an option? I think it's very much an option. We have attempted to align our spring break and be a little more consistent with what we have been finding in other districts. But we surely can move that if that is the will of the calendar committee. So I'd love others' feedback around that topic.
And Dr. Smith, thanks for talking about that. My concern just is, you know, you're talking about really maybe 2 or 3 weeks, especially at the high school level, I know before they start taking EOCs and things like that. So it just seemed, since we finished a little earlier and it's so late, it's a long time to go from January and then a sprint right after that. I don't know if that would be the best or not.
Following up on that, Principal Broadfoot, I definitely agree. I definitely agree with you. Ms. Johnson, I don't know if we would have to move. I think we could keep Easter Monday. My only concern is the alignment with the year rounds, because I know that becomes problematic for some families who have a child at Coddington or Eaton or one of the restart schools, and then we move spring break. So I don't know how that would look, but that can definitely present a challenge. I don't know if it's a challenge that's significant enough for us to sort of, bypass it. And I'm definitely interested in further conversation, though.
So what we could do is, what typically happens is when we make adjustments in our spring break, our restart schools in our year round, which actually is on a modified calendar, will follow suit. So I think we will still have that alignment, especially since we're doing that as a part of the process. So when would your suggestion be that we host spring break?
Dr. Smith, I wanted to share that on the year-round calendar, we start our intersession on Monday, March 28th.
Okay.
That would move it up a couple weeks for them. So it would still be aligned. We would just have, we're off, we have the 3 weeks. I don't know if that would help.
Okay. So what you're saying is you're currently aligned. So if we made the change in terms of moving it up, there wouldn't be any changes you would need to make. We could just change the designation within your calendar.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Byers.
Of course.
Dr. Smith, sorry, we're proposing if we do, of course, we would have Good Friday because I believe that's a state holiday.
Yes, ma'am.
But no Easter Monday?
I think Mr. Bowyer said that we would maintain Easter Monday. So we surely could do that. So then we would have the 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th that we could locate to another date. And we surely could capture a teacher work day. It wouldn't be a holiday, but a teacher work day. So teachers would have to come on April 1st. They'd have to come on this Friday. Because the only way that we would not be able to have it not be a teacher work day is if we took Easter Monday, or we could make Easter Monday a teacher work day.
Either the April 1st, which would otherwise, if we were to bump spring break up to that week, April 1st, that Friday would be a teacher work day. So that there would not be a full spring break. Or we can make Easter Monday a teacher work day. Is that what you're proposing?
So yes, so we could make, if we wanted to maintain both, so if we wanted to have Easter Monday to be a non-student day, it would have to be a work day. Because you have 5 days for the spring break, 5 annual leave days. And so if you use them all for the week of the 28th, 29th, 30th, and 31st of March, and then April 1, then the only thing you'd have left would be the holiday on April 15th. And so if you wanted April 18th, that would have to be a teacher work day.
If April 18th is a teacher work day, is there a way to make that undesignated and then also protected as one of the two that do not change to a designated? And I know that the principals, it's up to the discretion of the principals, but in terms of it being so close to a holiday as like a sign of respect.
We surely could make it an undesignated teacher work day by way of this calendar. I would I don't think that we could prevent principals from designating that, but I also don't know of any principals that would designate that. But we also do have staff, because they're not going to have annual leave, who would be required to work it. So just like we were talking about our BTs, they would be the folks who would be in the building on this particular day.
So Dr. Smith, what if we moved in order to do that? Personally, I'm fine with where spring break is, but that's because I know the weather is so much better in April. if I'm being picky, but you know, I understand where Charlie's coming from. So the 4 undesignated work days in June, would it just be easy just to move that undesignated work day from the 6th? Because I don't know that we would need all of the 5 undesignated work days at the end of the school year. Would that make it easy?
So we can move the undesignated work day, but again, it's a day students aren't in the building.
Right.
It would be a day that certain staff would be required to work. So your building would have to be open.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that's not a problem at all. So it would either be that Easter Monday would be a teacher work day, or Friday, April 1st would be a teacher work day.
If those are the options, I would go for Easter Monday being a teacher work day, being an undesignated work day.
Okay.
All right. I agree.
So do we have a consensus that we'd like to shift spring break to the week of March 28th, and that April 18th would be a undesignated teacher work day? If you agree with that, if you'll put a 1 in the chat box. Anyone with concerns or disagree, if you'll put a 2. Okay, so Ms. Cherry, if you'll make that change. All right, thank you. Anything else on the traditional calendar? All right, wonderful. So now we will shift to the year-round calendar, and here I will just allow you to ask questions or express concerns that you might have around the year-round calendar. And then also for our folks who are in year-round, if you want to talk a little bit about questions you might have, or maybe decisions that you've made this year that are different than previous years.
Dr. Smith, the only thing that came up with the principal at Coddington is the suggestion to maybe, we do have PD days in our calendar, and she made the suggestion of maybe doing it on a Thursday. I'm not sure that would be the parent-friendly way to do it, to be honest with you. But I wanted to throw that out there because it was her suggestion. And also, we made the change earlier that you suggested a cherry about our work day, and I like that. That was fine. And the only other suggestion was, I think parents know this, and I feel like we do a pretty good job at letting them know when we send out kindergarten letters, but someone wanted to make sure that when it says the first day of school is in July, or traditional with August, it's purple for the first day of school, but we also want to make sure parents understand that's also a staggered kindergarten day. I don't know if that's something that needs to be changed system-wide, but again, I feel like we do a good job at letting parents know that that is kindergarten that starts a third, and then the regular, students come on the 14th, the whole school.
So what we could do in the center column is to indicate staggered as 14, 15, and 16.
Okay.
It gets really busy when we try to overlap within the same calendar box, because if you put yellow on top of green, you get a very different color. I think you get blue. So yes. Do we need to have additional discussion about moving the the professional development day, I agree with you. I think that there might be some concerns expressed by parents in regard to that. And so I don't know if that's something that needs to be discussed here or if that's something that can be resolved between the two schools. It's, of course, a unique situation when you only have two schools following a particular calendar.
Yeah.
So questions or comments about the year-round calendar? Okay, if not, we will transition to our pre-K calendar. And essentially our pre-K calendar follows, is a mirror of our district traditional calendar. Ms. Miles is on the call, and Ms. Miles, of course, will make the adjustments in regards to spring break. But I didn't know if you had anything that you wanted to share specifically, Ms. Miles? Or
No,
questions
I am
that you might
so
have.
happy, Dr. Smith, to share out that for today, this looks fabulous.
Okay, wonderful.
Meets all of our requirements. We are a go.
All right, thank you. All right, and thank you, Jordan. I appreciate that, Miss. All right, next up, we have Freeman year-round pre-K. And so let's kind of skip that one and just go to our restart calendar first. And so here we have our restart calendar, also unique to two specific schools within our district. And we have Miss Manning representing our restart. And Miss Manning, I'd love to give you some the opportunity to ask any questions you might have or to speak to anything specifically changing within your calendar.
I don't have any questions. I'll just need to work with Cherry to move our spring break now that we've moved the spring break on the traditional calendar, so that it can be aligned. I know that's important for my teachers, because I have a lot of teachers who, they have kids in middle school or high school on traditional calendar. The only concern I have, and I mean, there's really nothing we can do about it with moving spring break, is our kids would be out 2 weeks, then we come back for 4 days, and then out on a Friday and a Monday. So it's a little bit choppy, but we'll make it work.
Okay.
I think the pros of aligning our spring break with the other calendars far outweigh that. So.
And you may even want to consider making some changes in your intersession if you think that might work a little better for your folks. But just let us know what your preference is, and we will work to make that happen.
Okay, sounds good. I'll work with Cherry to make sure all the days align.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And then we'll go backwards. And so here we have the Freeman year-round pre-K calendar, which will align with the restart calendar for our restart schools. And again, we'll make those changes based on the changes that we tweak out of restart. Any questions or concerns here?
LaShawn, and this may not be a popular comment, but I'm just going to make it. I'm looking at all the calendars, and I heard your logic and reasoning why we don't do half days. But when I look at the calendars, you've got year-round has multiple half days. WEC and CTEC have one, and no other calendar has half days.
And that is because it's specific to those schools. Those schools are unique. And for our year-round schools, it's been long-standing. For our traditional schools, we eliminated that just simply because they were ineffective for us.
Okay, so they're still able to make those, get
Yes.
things done and be able to have PD. Okay.
Yes, because again, with our year-round calendar, we have two schools. They have much greater flexibility. You're not trying to make it work for 24 elementary schools. You're only trying to make it work for 2. And then with WEX and CTEC, again, you're not trying to make it work for 8 high schools. You're only trying to make it work for 2.
Yeah.
And so they have greater calendar flexibility than other schools within the district. But thank you for pointing that out. And so what we've done, actually, I think it's a great segue. Well, actually, we're going to talk about Isaac Bear. As you know, Isaac Bear, early college, those students transition to UNCW at the end of their sophomore year. And so there is certain alignment that we try to put in place with the college and the university calendar when we can. And so I think Mr. Valans is here today. And Mr. Valans, if you'd like to speak to any significant changes or maybe questions or comments you have about your calendar.
I would like to ask possibly, because I was aligned with the traditional schools for spring break, if I could possibly align again with traditional schools for spring break since it was changed. My UNCW break is roughly around the week of March 8th. So we'll be close enough. It wouldn't really affect us that much at all.
Yes, we could definitely make those changes for you. All right.
Thank you, ma'am.
Oh, you're more than welcome. And then up next, you'll notice, and we did this for this past year, we have aligned the calendars for Wilmington Early College and C-Tech. And so they have a shared calendar. And so Ms. Wooten, if you would like to speak to this, any questions, concerns that you have, and if there's a desire to align your spring break with the traditional, which it doesn't look like it was before, we surely can make those changes as well. I think yours is actually aligned with the community college.
It is. Ours is aligned with community college. It just makes it so much easier for our kids taking college classes. And we added a couple of other days so that it's aligned more closely with the college. So we're good. We looked over it and sent changes, and Miss Cherry made our changes already.
All right, wonderful. Okay. And so here again is the worksheet, which tells how many days we have within our calendar. Just a reminder, we have to calendar 215 days, whether they're student days, annual leave days, teacher work days, holidays. We have to calendar 215 work days for our folks. Also, you have, as I said before, the calendars that were approved prior to COVID as a guidance, as a guide for you. You want to see how we've done things in the past. And then at this point, any additional questions that you may have about any of our calendars or comments.
Dr. Smith, I hate to bring it up. Was there a change in the state law related to those remote days? I mean, I know we've had a lot of remote, but from the original calendar law.
Yes, and I don't know the exact term, but essentially it was only for 1 year. So it's not that it grandfathered, but it in essence expired. And we did consult with legal to make sure that we were correct in that. And so that's what it's allowing us to develop our calendars now. So we have reverted back to the previous calendar law.
Great, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So from our parent representatives, want to make sure we give time and space for your comments, concerns. So hearing no additional discussion or question, then what I would say is if you will take this back to the groups that you represent and share this widely. We want this to be front facing. We want folks to understand that it is a draft. But if you would share this with them, and then if you could send the feedback directly to either my email or to the email of Cherry Smith, that way we can incorporate the suggested changes in some form or fashion, of course, still draft, so that they could be discussed at our next meeting. And then at our next meeting, our goal would be to finalize calendars so that we could take them to the board at their interim meeting in February.
Hey, Dr. Smith,
Yes.
do you know when Cherry will update those calendars to make the adjustments for spring break so we can get that particular calendar out?
Yes, ma'am. She will have those updated tomorrow.
Okay, wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you. We
Yes.
love our Cherry.
I do too. Yes, we will send those updates out tomorrow as soon as those changes are made, Ms. Johnson. And I believe our next meeting is scheduled for February the 10th, same time, same location. I'll make sure that my audio is working a little bit better. I do apologize to you for that. And if we have no additional questions or comments or concerns, then I think we're at a point where we can adjourn. But before doing that, I'd love to offer Mr. Bowyer the opportunity to close.
Yeah, guys, thank you again for being here, especially to all of our principals, parent reps, and teacher reps. Dr. Smith, thank you very much for your work on this, and thank you, Sherry, as well. But I really appreciate, the opportunity to look past COVID, even though we're still meeting with Zooms. And I'm sure that all of your stakeholders will be excited as well when they see a calendar that I really believe we're going to stick to. So thank you guys very much, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you, guys.